time. It is
great.
Saturday at 6:08. I think it is.
We already have technical difficulties,
Yeah.
but we're gonna get rid of that.
What is that button say?
It says
Love it.
So go up here. Yeah, we're streaming live, so
Yes,
this is just what is.
That's real life. It is. But welcome
Yes.
to All the Things. I'm Monique Dusan.
And this
Go
is
ahead.
the show where we discuss God, the Bible, real life, all
Yes.
the things.
All the things in real life right now is that we are having technical difficulties. Like I said, I'm Monique. You are?
Krista Bontrager, and we are here live, and we want to invite you to join us on the chat. Hopefully the chat is working. We have been having so many technical problems in the last 24 hours. Big round of applause to my husband, Bob, working tirelessly.
Yes.
Trying to get us back up and going. It's been crazy, but we're going to hopefully see what's happening here.
Does the Facebook look good?
And we're hopefully the everything is streaming and we're live and people are going to be here.
If you're there and you can see and hear us, send a little shout out in the chat box.
That's right. So, I think it's a good point it's a good time to just talk a little bit. We're always trying to introduce people to what our vision of the show is. Mm-hmm. And there's, you and I come from pretty diverse backgrounds.
Yep.
And culturally, obviously, did you know I'm white racially?
Yes. I found that out yesterday.
Yeah. But we have different life experiences, and we're both in our own journey and process. And we're wanting this show to represent, people from different walks of life. And, I play the professional theologian on the show, and
I'm just the person on the show.
But no, you're taking on the role of the kinds of questions that regular people would ask. Because you're a regular people.
I guess. That's all I have today.
Well, I think it's important to let people know that is what you're up to on the show.
Yeah. Like we were just talking off camera a while ago, that I am not a theologian. I actually studied sociology and social work, and have a love and passion for that. And not really theology so much, although I think I'm growing in that knowledge and appreciation. I think when I ask questions, I do ask from a more like, hey, I wonder this or I wonder that. And it may come out ill-informed, but it's more just because I'm just a regular person.
Yeah.
And
that's good. So I'm always wanting to help people understand, what the vision of the show is. And we do have a very special guest that we want to introduce here and get on the air. But I do want to encourage everyone to get in our live chat box. Okay, Laura's watching from Dallas. She says she can see and hear us, so we're in business.
Yay! Hi, Laura.
But all right, let's meet Mrs. Sarah Wilkins. Get
From
her
Enid, Oklahoma.
Yes, get her on the show, and we're gonna get her picture up here. Bob's working on it.
While Bob's working on it,
we can see her. She's there.
All right, good. Yay! It's all working.
Yes,
there she is. Awesome. All right, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Maybe we should do a little introduction.
Yeah,
of Miss Sarah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about. We're going to be talking about ministry to young moms. It's such an important ministry. Once upon a time, I was a young mom.
Well, maybe they're not young moms. Maybe they're just moms of young people.
There it is.
Because moms come in all ages.
That's right.
Yes.
And Sarah's been working in that ministry for a while, and we thought it'd be great to have a conversation about a ministry to young moms or moms of young children. And maybe you can talk to us about how and why you got involved in this ministry and why you see this as being so important.
Well, I was pretty regular too. I was not raised in a Christian family, and became a believer when I was about in 6th grade at a church that had a great bus ministry and had people that would pick me up. And I ended up marrying a man that went in full-time ministry. And then he was hired at a church in Enid, Oklahoma, and we moved up here while I was pregnant with my first child. And I didn't know anyone, and I had to give up my job. So I didn't know anyone, and I was invited to attend a MOPS group, and I went. And my first baby wasn't very easy, so she would get kicked out of the nursery for about 6 months of her life. She never made it for more than 20 minutes in a nursery. So all the former ministries I used to be able to be involved in with my husband, I couldn't do anymore. So I joined in with MOPS about, it's been 10 years ago, and have been in it ever since. So, and we create our own programming now, and we're actually all moms. So all moms can come. They don't have to have just littles anymore for our group.
So when you got involved with MOPS in the beginning, was that a time in your life where you were already a Christian, or you were kind of coming along in your faith? What was the role that group played for you?
Well, I became a believer in 6th grade. And when we came to Enid Emanuel, which it's a large church. So I'd always just been doing youth ministry and children's ministry, and the role of a staff wife, just doing whatever needed to be done. But Emanuel, at a large church, there wasn't a need for that, and I couldn't do what I did before. And that was the first ministry that reached out, and what I saw was an amazing opportunity to reach out to moms within our community, and immediately understood the openness of people in that position. I met so many women that were just like me. They had just moved to town, and they were having their first children, and they didn't know anyone. And it was the first time in their life that they didn't have friends. And they had to learn how to make friends. So they were willing to come into a church, even though they didn't go to a church, and even though they didn't know anyone else, they would try it. So immediately just saw the potential of, wow, this is a neat thing. This is a neat opportunity for all kinds of women to gather together.
Well, I think that mom's ministry is such a unique season of life when you're a mom of young children, and it can be quite disorienting. Things are changing, your life has changed, and having that camaraderie certainly helps. We didn't have a MOPS group at my church, but we did have a similar ministry just run by my church. There's their own independent program, and it was such a important time of my life to be able to begin to connect with other moms. And I'm still friends with many of those women. In fact, one of our viewers right now that's watching, I met when I was a young mom, and we were in that group together. And that was just such an important season of my life. Do you find that in that season, women are willing to come into the church? Maybe they've fallen away from their faith, or maybe they've had no faith, that there's something about that vulnerable moment, that season, where they're willing to begin to investigate faith.
Absolutely. We've seen that. It can be incredibly lonely. And when you're new to town and you have a child, so you have no natural friendships, you have no coworkers. At the same time, you also have no boss telling you did a good job. So people can get very isolated. And because of that isolation, if they see and are invited enough, they will try it. So if a ministry has eyes to see them and hospitality, they will come and they will stay. I think we have at our meetings, there's usually two brand new women every single meeting. And we'll run, some years it's been as high as 60% new women coming in, and a vast half of them one year indicated zero church experience or de-churched. So we have an application form and we ask those questions so we know who they are. And we had, I think, 55 women 2 years ago that indicated that. So, and that's a big deal in Oklahoma. Usually still, you'll write down a church here if you've gone in the last 2 years. So when someone leaves it blank or says none, they mean it. I mean, they really haven't been in a long time. So it's an opportunity for someone to come in and make friendships, feel comfortable in a church, realize for a lot of them, we're not weird. We have that, church people kind of have that reputation. Also, I think what they feel from our group, there's 8 different denominations on our planning team. So ours isn't a single church ministry. It's really a community ministry. So I think that relieves them of fearing that we might have some weird alternative or ulterior motive for them coming. We can say, hey, we do think you should go to church, but there's 8 different ones here, and we don't care which one you go to. So
I'm really unfamiliar with MOPS or all moms. How do moms get to you? Is it just word of mouth, or like, is there advertisement?
Our primary contact point is a public Facebook page. Okay. So it's not super active all year long, but definitely in the summer. We try to do 2 posts a day, which might just be community information or parenting articles or things that moms might find interesting. So it keeps them coming to the page. And then a few weeks leading up before our first meeting, we'll post a series of what is All Moms, and we'll go through exactly what we do, like every single question there could be. And then we do a drive-through registration event, which is really good because they can watch the Facebook and then they can come and see us, and they get to stay in the safety of their own environment in their car, and their kids stay buckled up, and they can just keep on driving if they don't like what they see. So that has been a really good tool for people who are de-churched or who are unchurched, because they drive up, they see what we look like, they choose to stop or not, and then we get to talk to them and tell them exactly what happens at a meeting, exactly what they're supposed to do. And that really helps.
What a creative idea. I think that's such a creative idea. If you were to talk to pastors right now, like, what would you tell them about why mom's ministry matters? Like, why could that be a powerful way of reaching out to their community? Maybe pastors should think about adding this to their church.
Well, they should, because the women are open to it. There's just not that many people groups left that are open to invitations that will just come to the church. So it's a worthy investment. At our large church, we're the most effective evangelism outreach ministry that we have. And like I said, we've got 8 other steering members from different churches. It's not like we're funneling women specifically to ours. So we've seen really good results. And another huge aspect of it is it's lay-led. So at the same time, we're teaching a lay team how to do Christian ministry and how to equip them to think of people the way God outlines for us to think of them in Scripture, to see the value in people, to learn patience, and to learn to appreciate all different types of personalities and backgrounds and people, and then how to engage in relationship. I just think think about how hard and the millennial generation has with connecting in relationship. It's a deep desire. So I don't see this. I see that need for this kind of ministry to grow because people desire relationships and they're isolated. And if you can create an environment like in a mom's group where people can come in as complete strangers and give it a try, then that's amazing. So it really, for our church, our pastors aren't involved at all. So we do everything. We even plan all the, what the kids are doing in the nursery. So we handle the purchasing of all that curriculum and everything. So
That's awesome.
It's a good way to train people to actually do ministry.
Yeah, and along those lines, tell us a little bit about your teaching tools and like the training tools that you're using.
Well, we started doing our own in 2016, which we were really scared to do. We had been purchasing programming from MOPS. We had been a MOPS group for over 20 years. It was like 25 years. So we were initially really scared of that change. We thought, well, we'll have to change our name and maybe people won't come, or maybe it won't be quite as slick and people won't come. But it wasn't. So really, on our end, we're just creating a theme and graphics, Bible study materials. Initially, we created some training materials to actually do the ministry for the women who are on steering. And then we put together a welcome packet for the women that goes with the theme. So we're basically doing the same method that MOPS did. We're just doing the creative ourselves, which we've gotten done. And that's another area of the leadership development, is a lot of the women supply the writing. So for our theme, we'll collect a series of articles and make a book every year. And lots of people, women in ministry in our community, send things into us that we then get to hear from at meetings, and women in our own group do as well. So that's, we were scared, and then we were surprised at how easy it actually was.
Well, let me ask you about that, because you've mentioned a couple of times that you transitioned away from MOPS, and I know that MOPS is a really big, huge ministry. It's an international ministry, but I'm wondering if you can talk to us about some of the things that played into your journey, kind of going independent, and how that happened.
Well, I was really super and, all in on the MOPS method. I went to the convention. They have an international convention every year. It's in the States. And I went multiple times. We always had at least 3 women go every year. We had, about my 4th year in, our group had gotten really small. We had a lot of turnover of leadership, and we had a lot of turnover of women all at one time. And our mentors, there's some older women in the church involved, had suggested that we actually fold. So we had worked really, really hard to build our group back up. So it was really attached, and all in with MOPS. And I really think I thought of MOPS as the ministry, which I figured out 4 years ago. The ministry is the local. The ministry is what the women, the lay people of the church doing the ministry, that's the ministry. MOPS is the tool. But in 2016, I still thought of MOPS as the ministry. I wasn't leading the group. I'd always just done the PR and the marketing. And the coordinator position, there was an emergency, and 6 weeks before our first meeting, all of a sudden I was the coordinator. So MOPS would send you a packet of all the information for the year, and I was so excited. And I opened it, and I'm like, I got 6 weeks to get this done. And then I read it, and it was not at all like it had been in previous years. There was a very large change in content. So MOPS is the tool, it's the help. And MOPS partners with churches, and you sign like a contract. And what they're providing is the training for the lay leadership to do the group. And then, content that each woman gets, but she pays for. So each woman has to send MOPS money and register with them. And then they write a theme. Well, there was a book that year, and there was a brand new president that had just started, and it was her book and her theme. And it was a 180. So previous years, the book and the theme content were distinctively Christian worldview. MOPS is not a Bible study. But it had always been Christian worldview. So when you opened up, what the women got wasn't like, hey, you're a Christian woman. Here's your Bible study book. That's not what it was. It was a book that was from the Christian worldview, and the content would appeal to everyone, believer and unbeliever. But the things that were in that packet that year included a lot of teachings that conflicted with essential doctrine. And what I mean by that, the basics. My group, there's 8 different denominations, and we believe drastically different things about a lot of things, but we all believe in the gospel, the simple gospel, that we're sinners.
There were some core essentials that you would rally around. Yeah.
Right. That we all agreed on. And the content of the book, there was a lot of mysticism, a lot of John Philip Newell, who's a Celtic mystic, his ideas of sacred earth and Mother Earth and grounding and releasing of shame, and that are contrary to the essential core doctrine that Jesus is the one that saves you from your sins, that you need a savior. So that, when I read it, I took it to my pastor and asked him to read it. And he read it and I just brought to him and said, I'm afraid we start in 6 weeks and I don't think you want me to use any of this. But why don't you read it? And he did, and immediately got back to me and said, yeah, we can't do this. And I said, well, let me see what I can do. Maybe MOPS will let me pull things from the packet for the mom, and we can still do MOPS. Maybe this is a fluke and next year it'll be fine. But maybe we can pull the things out of the packet and stay MOPS. So I tried to figure out what was going on and tried to make it work, but couldn't. There was no way to pull things out of the packet. But we had already paid. So we used that theme that year. We just scrambled and rewrote things and made packets. So in
that process, though, what I hear you saying is that all of a sudden you were kind of thrust into a position of being your local church coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
You get this packet in the mail. You start thinking, oh, wow, the messaging is quite a bit different. All of a sudden, there's a new person in charge. The wording is quite different. And what we're getting now seems to be quite a bit different than the gospel-oriented way that had been in the past. And now you're not only thrust into a position of being your local church coordinator, now you've become an amateur theologian, because you've got to try to figure out how am I going to guide this group of women through something, and how are we going to keep this important ministry together?
Right. And I didn't want the women to know. Half our women weren't believers. So the women themselves didn't know any of this was happening. We never actually said anything. We just announced that we were doing a name change at the end of the year. The crazy part was, I did all this reading, and I was trying to get answers from MOPS. So I went through. They have there's 2 layers of volunteers before you get to a paid MOPS person. So I went through them, and that took a while, and I had 6 weeks to start with. So the clock was ticking. And then finally got to speak with an employee in California. And I asked her those questions, like, did you include other belief systems on purpose? Like, is this how a new strategy? And it took several back and forth, but she responded, and she did indicate that that's their strategy. She said, I have that email that MOPS believes that Acts 17, which is the passage I had named my daughter after the year before. My daughter's name is Damaris, which is a weird name, but it's out of Acts 17. And so I was very familiar with that chapter. And Paul, he goes up, he's in Greece, and they're philosophizing at the top of the hill about all the different beliefs, and all the gods are represented up there. And there's the to the unknown God thing, and Paul references it and tells them about Jesus. Well, there's only 2 converts, and Damaris is one of them. But in the email I got from MOPS, it said that they interpret Acts 17 to mean that it's fruitful to include information from other religions, is basically what the email said. And then she went on to say, and if you have problems, then that's an opportunity for you to meet with the women who aren't Christians to explain them the difference between that in the book and what Christ teaches. Well, like, I got 55 women who aren't believers. That's a whole lot of explaining to do. And that is not an interpretation of Acts 17 that any well-known theologian has ever had. So once I saw that in writing, that was a whole different thing.
And I think that what's important in this is we should probably say what the title of the book was, because we haven't mentioned that. It's the Starry-Eyed Book. And I have a graphic for that. And people can find it on Amazon. I read it a couple of days ago, and I'm going to be posting a review of the book on my YouTube channel in the next day or so, just with my thoughts about the book in particular. But the short version of it is that, really, in my opinion, as a theologian, the worldview advocated in the book is some version of Eastern mysticism, pantheism, duality, and but it also has like this splash of kind of medieval mysticism as well. It's very odd, the mixing of worldviews that's in the book. But I wouldn't be able to say as a theologian that it's a distinctly Christian book, that it's pointing people to, like, using the thoughts of other perspectives to eventually point people to Christ. Like, that's not what the book is doing. And so, anyways, I think Monique had a question.
I did. I haven't read the book. But one of my original thoughts after reading the Share Jesus book and trying to see how it could fit in with the Starry-Eyed Book is, my question is along the lines of being seeker friendly. And could this be MOPS' attempt at being seeker friendly, or is this just completely like off the page, not seeker friendly, new age, and like you said earlier, a 180 turn from the historic Christian belief and perspective?
Well, the problem is with MOPS is that women never see anything from MOPS until they pay. And they don't pay until usually their second meeting if they're new. So I did speak with the president, Mandy Ariotto, on the phone, and I did ask her about that and said, because before she was the president, she was the marketing specialist at MOPS. Because in one of the emails, they had said, we did these changes because we want to reach, I think, 5 million new moms, and we want to do a new thing. And we think if we change the materials, we'll reach more. So my question back to her was, but if you're going to think of it in worldly terms, the customer's already been acquired before you see anything. So it's not outreach. The only outreach the women see, MOPS sends you pieces of graphics, and each group creates their own marketing stuff. And that's all they see before they come. So, and a lot of women don't pay, at least in my group, for quite a while, or it takes them a while. They might pay $5 a meeting until they might lay away it. So that's what didn't make sense. The tool MOPS, the way we saw it as a church, for 25 years, one of the mentor moms that's involved has been involved with it the entire time it's been at the church, and she's still I'm very close with her. MOPS was the tool for evangelism, outreach to moms in the community. So their job was to train the lay leaders and to give them content. So the MOPS content was supposed to help, not deter, but help women move towards Christ. The meetings themselves, we have always and continue to have, we have live speakers. So we have live speakers from our community. It might be someone coming to speak on gardening, or it might be someone coming to do a cooking lesson, or it might be someone talking about finances. But the meetings themselves, classically in MOPS, weren't provided by them. Now they have changed that with Mandy. Now they send DVD videos. That had started changing when Mandy came in 2015. And we played a couple of those videos, but like one of them was from Glennon Doyle Melton, and we played that video. And then I could tell from social media, like 22 of our women followed her that afternoon on Instagram. And I have a lot of issues with her theology.
Right.
Yeah.
They do not match MOPS statement of faith at all. So that's
I
where you-
think what you're saying in all of that, Sarah, is that there's a difference between being seeker open and inviting. This is
Mhm.
kind of what I call it, is that, you're having talks on kind of neutral topics like gardening or cooking or whatever. So it's not like you're trying to hammer people with the Bible from the
Right.
moment they get in the door. So it is already kind of open and oriented toward a non-believer and inviting them into church. But at the same time, the behind the scenes programming is that we're in conversations that are moving them closer to the cross, that are
right,
moving them closer to the real Lord Jesus Christ. And I think,
right,
Sarah, reading between the lines of what you're saying, I think what you're saying is this change in direction felt to you as a leader, like we're not really orienting people toward salvation anymore. We're just orienting them toward community as like an end goal.
Yeah.
And that it's no longer necessarily even Christian. It's just community for the sake of camaraderie.
That's definitely what it seemed like the Starry-Eyed year. And I will say these are lay-led ministries. And again, all the ministry is local. So every MOPS group is completely dependent on the discipleship of their lay women and what training and equipping they have received. In old MOPS, the training and equipping from MOPS was thorough and good in every area. That training changed also in 2016. They pulled it down 2017. For instance, in the share, they did away with all their training, which was kind of just, they had built on it for 25 years. And that went away, and they produced a little pamphlet book. And it includes the training for sharing your testimony. It includes all the training for relational ministry and how to think about women coming in your door, and how to check your heart and how to pray. It includes that, but it's missing, the scriptures that are actually the gospel. So there's no training in that. So I mean,
that part of it has been eliminated, is the actual gospel training.
Right. So it's not that the training they have is bad. It's just, it's missing something. And if you're a lay-led ministry, like for me, I depended on that training. So if we're going to stay with MOPS, I was also going to have to pull up another gospel training from some other place to use it. So groups could supplement that. They could have their pastor come in and say, hey, just tell us what the gospel is. But why? Why did that one part get removed?
So these are a lot of questions that you've had as you've moved forward, and I think it's so. I guess I just really want to honor your courage, Sarah, in speaking out about these things, because you're not a professional theologian. You are just a mom in ministry trying to reach other moms. And now all of a sudden you've been thrust into a position of, hey, I have some concerns here. You tried to investigate the concerns and ask questions and ask people that were high up in the ministry. Maybe I'm misunderstanding things. Maybe I'm not understanding what's going on. Can you please help to clarify? And yet at every turn, it seemed like, no, these changes are intentional. We really are trying to go a different direction.
Mm-hmm. And that's the response that I got, which prompted me to write a blog. And I'm not a blogger. Like, I wrote in college to eat, like feature stories. But I don't blog. But I just was investigating. I read Starry-Eyed, and she mentions quite a few people in the book. So I watched all their stuff and read their stuff, and then could realize, a lot of Starry-Eyed is Newell's idea. Like, once you watch Newell from 2016, oh, that's his idea. That's his idea. That's his idea. So it just caused just hours and hours. I was kind of obsessively researching it, and wrote a blog just to say, hey, here's the concerns. It'd be good if pastors read the book. And to be honest, a lot of groups, a lot of the steering teams, nobody ever reads the book. The problem is MOPS changed it too, where now the materials the mom gets, they reference the book. So there's much more incentive to buy it and read it. So they include this workbook for the book. So the women get the workbook, but they don't get the book unless they buy it separate. But I just thought, this seems like a big change. And they're changing the training, and wrote the blog. And because I wrote the blog, there's a realization that I was not the only one having concerns, because that blog got more separate IP hits than anything my pastor has ever gotten on any other article. There were a lot of people looking for information, and a lot of people hunted me down and talked to me on the phone and emailed me. Including lots of former coaches.
What has, since the blog, how has that connected you to other women, and how are you seeing other groups handle this drifting away, if you want to call it that, and how are they handling potentially even leaving their own MOPS groups?
Well, it's really difficult, because a lot of women, I've gotten phone calls the solid last 3 years. The first 6 months after that blog, it was intense. It was 40 plus hours a week, and getting our group started, of people calling and saying, what do I do? So I spoke with a lot of different people and kind of came to the conclusion that the thing that makes it easier is if people realize that MOPS is a programming tool and not the ministry, that the ministry is what your group is doing. And if you can make that separation, then you can think about it more clearly. Lots of groups, this was a huge problem, because the steering teams of lay women themselves were trying to make the decision, and they would have people on both sides that were adamant, and it ate up a lot of people. There was a lot of bad things happening at different churches over this. My recommendation has been, on the phone over and over again, is ask your pastor to make the decision. Give your pastor the packet, ask him to look at it, or her to look at it, and ask them to make the decision. Because the relationships within the steering team won't be the same if not everybody's in agreement. So
that's that's really good advice.
It's
because
really,
then the pastor having a say, and because you're wanting him or her to be behind the ministry as a whole, what you're trying to do to reach the de-churched, to reach people who are non-Christians. You want them to have some buy-in to that and to understand the vision. So I think that's some really good advice.
The other thing was just encouraging to do it, to don't quit. Whatever you decide to do. A lot of groups called me and they decided to stay with MOPS, some of them in name only, so they'll be really restrictive with what they use. Like, so they might not use the videos, or they might rewrite the things that come in the packet. The year that we were with MOPS last year, there was a 30-day dare, truth or dare sheet thing. Well, we rewrote that where it would work with our group. So just encouraging, you can stay with them. You're going to have to redo a lot of what you're already paying for. If you have issues with some of it.
So one of our viewers has a question. Laura wants to know, are there more biblically faithful programs that we can recommend to moms? Like, is there any emerging MOPS alternative, or is everyone just kind of going independent? Is that sort of the trend?
We've emailed out our programming a lot the last 3 years. If someone's asked for it, we've sent it to them. What's available on the market is for Christian women. There's a lot of women's ministry at the church organizations, but they are not Christian worldview. They are discipleship based.
Right.
So we searched high and low because we thought we need something else. And I talked to the lady that was running Mom to Mom to see what was available at the time. And the goal for that ministry is Christian women. So we wanted our goal to stay outreach. So I'm sending it to people, but a lot of bigger churches I've talked to have just I think a lot of them just aren't doing themes. They're just still doing speakers and using the method.
They're using the name MOPS, but they're just not using the programming so much.
No, you can't legally do that. So you just have to change your name.
Okay.
But they might not be we're creating all the same kinds of content that MOPS did as far as a packet and a theme.
Okay.
So, kudos to you for taking that stand and definitely standing that ground in that area where it is outreach and it is reaching out to to women who are unchurched and isolated and alone in that season of life. I think that's huge. And I'm also wondering, what encouragement do you have to moms who are considering leaving or don't really know exactly how to stand in the middle of seeing a drift in the theology of MOPS?
Well, the encouragement is it's a tool, and the ministry can be done without the tool. But also, there was a podcast released a week ago that quoted me a lot, but I didn't even know that was happening. And their kind of encouragement was, leave it now, leave MOPS now. I would say, no, don't stop the moms ministry. You need to still do it. And I've spoken to a lot of groups that are still doing MOPS. You just need to be vigilant in what you're exposing your women to. Like, you've got to do the research. You need to research the speakers in the video before you play it, because your women will follow that person's social media. So even if this content of the video is fine, is their everyday fine? So if you're going to stick with it, my encouragement is you're going to have research it. And I got the list of their videos this year a few weeks ago, and several of the people, like, I would play that video at my church. Some of them I wouldn't. So
there has to be an amount of vigilance about checking each of the tools.
Right.
Yeah.
And to think through, does this message, is it innocuous? Does it, not push them either direction? Does it move them towards Jesus, or does it point them in a different direction? And anything that points them in a different direction needs to go.
Yeah.
So, and to me, I'm good with innocuous. I'm good with a good gardening lesson. So, you just have to be vigilant in the content and know that if you don't want to do MOPS anymore, like, you can still have that ministry at your church. You can use methods are not copyrighted. Like, you can do that. You just wouldn't have their theme to use. But literally no one asked us a question about it when we switched. No one noticed.
Now, how can people get connected with you? Is there a way that people can reach you if they want to continue the conversation?
Sure. I answer my emails. So I'm available through that. They can find the Enid All Moms Facebook and message through that or follow that.
In Enid, Oklahoma. ENID. Enid,
right.
Oklahoma. Okay.
So I'm open to answering those kinds of calls. Do you want me to give my email address?
Well, can they, even if they just look you up on Facebook, will they find you?
Yes. And I'm the Sarah Wilkins that doesn't party. There's 2 Sarah Wilkins in Enid, and I have 3 kids and I stay at home. So
okay.
Well, that could be a party all of its own. Just a different party.
Well, Sarah, it's been really great to have you on the show, and I appreciate all of your meticulous research. People just need to know the hundreds of hours that have gone into all of this for you. And I have been the late joiner in this, but I really just, again, want to commend you on your courage. And not every person would answer the call to advocating for doctrinal discernment. I mean, I think that moms deserve good theology. I don't think that we should tell moms, hey, you're kind of not as smart as everyone else. It's okay if we give you sloppy theology. As a theologian, I always want to advocate for good theology for children, for families, for moms, for dads, for everybody. So I just really commend your courage in what you've done to try to become a voice and a face for saying, hey, wait a minute, we're drifting into an area here that might not be good, and asking the right questions, trying to talk to the right people, researching this. It's hard because when something has been as loved as MOPS has been for you, to go through the transition you've been through, it takes a lot of courage. And I just want to commend you for all that you've done in that area.
Well, thank you, Krista. And just the encouragement is, if you have a group, figure out how to keep it. And if you don't have a group, you should, because women will come.
Yeah.
So it's a great ministry.
It is a great ministry, and reaching de-churched moms, reaching non-Christian moms is an important ministry. And you're right. I love what you said at the beginning. There's very few people groups left that just need an invitation. They're in a season of life where they're really open to something new. And I think that's pretty perceptive of you. And I love your evangelistic heart for the non-Christian. And keep up the good work. And again, I'm going to be posting in the next day or so a book review of the book Starry-Eyed that we've been talking about tonight. And I'll get that up on my YouTube channel so people can watch on my Facebook page or subscribe to the YouTube channel to get notified about that. So thank you, Sarah. Keep in touch and let me know how things are continuing to progress.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Well, that was interesting.
There's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Because things are falling down over here.
Yeah.
You were a little nervous before we went on the air about this.
I am wondering, and I think she helped to clarify some questions. But are we as Christians wanting to be like too constrictive in our seeker-friendly posture? Like, oh no. And I think this is the thought that I was coming into the conversation with, of like, do we have to use all the big terms on the first time I meet somebody? So we got to talk about the cross and the blood and, atonement and sin and, all these things. I just want to come and see what y'all doing. Why do we have to go there so soon? And not to say that those aren't important themes or important parts of scripture that are integral to the faith, but also...
Is she still on, Bob?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Maybe mute her sound.
I've got it.
Okay.
This is real life, people. We are real, okay?
Just keeping the real. Yeah.
But also, not wanting to preach a different gospel.
Yeah.
I think Paul warns us about preaching a different gospel. I think it's
Galatians
Paul.
1.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, this is why I'm not the theologian. But for me, when I read the Share Jesus book, there was nothing in there that to me said, oh, I'm pointing you to a different gospel.
Right. And I would agree with that. I mean, there's nothing overtly, there's a couple of really bad examples of don't interpret the Bible this way. That's just really bad. But I'll leave that to the side. It's not, there's a difference between bad exegesis and leading people into a different worldview. So I'm willing to have some grace about that. But I'm wondering if Sarah's conversation changed your mind about any of those concerns and how her methodology in trying to make it oriented.
What did change my mind was the part where she talked about this is a tool to train lay people on how to evangelize to a non-Christian. I wouldn't want to see a tool that includes New Age or mysticism or, some other whatever, in a tool to outreach to someone else, unless it's telling them, hey, in this situation regarding the person who does believe in mysticism, this is the counter to that. This is how you work with that, but not not from a stand of being all inclusive in saying, well, people can believe in this and all roads lead to Jesus, because all roads don't lead to Jesus. But yeah, I'm not that familiar with MOPS. I did have a conversation with a friend who is involved in MOPS, and the term seeker friendly came up.
Sure.
And so I thought about that quite a bit. Like, there's nothing wrong with not talking about blood and atonement,
right?
My first day meeting someone, even though my end goal is to introduce you to Christ.
But it doesn't sound like that's what Sarah's doing.
No,
at all. It sounds like they're really trying
talking about gardening.
Yeah, having a balanced approach, creating an inviting environment. But what I think Sarah's point is that when we do get around to the conversations
how
about,
do you do that?
Yeah, who is Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be a Christian?
Yes.
We want to be like crystal clear
about
where we're pointing people to.
Yes.
Rather than introducing what I would consider in the Starry-Eyed Book a different worldview. Mm-hmm. So, and then kind of tacking Jesus onto that, which I think is deeply problematic. But I'll detail all of that in my review, and I've got some quotes and everything that I'll talk about. But I think it was a good conversation because it really points out to me the reason I wanted to have Sarah on the show is that I have a saying on my website: the theology is for everyone. I really truly believe in my heart that everyone is a theologian. Now, you can be a good theologian or a sloppy theologian, something in between. You can be a professional theologian like myself, or you can be a regular mom. But all of us have a theology, and all of us are passing that theology on to the next generation, good, bad, sloppy, or otherwise. I think Sarah is an excellent example of that. All of us have to have some baseline knowledge to know when something starts going into the ditch. Hey, wait a minute. Drift is happening here. I don't want to be carried away, as it says in Ephesians 4, by every wind of doctrine. Yeah. Sarah she's researched it. She didn't just react. She went and talked to the leaders. She leveraged her network to talk to the right people, to ask the right question, get her pastor involved, research on YouTube. I think as a layperson, she has done an outstanding job of what I wish more people would do, is noticing drift.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate her stand for moms of any age, because, women in their 40s are now having babies too. So yes.
You're hopeful.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I like her stand.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, this is what I noticed, but I'm not going to stand for that. We are going to continue to promote sound doctrine.
Yeah. We're going to continue the ministry. We're going to continue to reach out to non-Christians.
This isn't going to stop us.
Right. Yeah, that's good. So, new teachings. on my YouTube channel. I just finished this little series on the curse of Ham, and I have a question for you.
Mhm,
So I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Go ahead.
I have to tell you honestly that this question of is the curse of Ham in Genesis chapter 9, that was a completely new concept for me, that was thought of as being like the source of the black race.
You
Like,
should have found out how shocked I was when I read it at Biola.
I
Yes.
have no knowledge of this. So I'm just curious from are you ready to like speak for all black people now?
I will not speak for all black people. I will
you're only
speak for
speaking
myself.
yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Very good
'Cause I am
clarification.
one.
Yes.
I am one.
So that's sort of an ongoing joke between Monique and I.
Yes.
Because sometimes people ask her opinion. I think, can you speak for all black people?
Yeah, that was my life at Biola.
Yeah.
But I love Biola. I really do. It's a special place in my heart.
But why do you think this question about the curse of Ham even matters? Like, do you think that this is a thing? Have black people heard of this idea, or do they have a perception about themselves as being cursed?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that many know that this is even going around in circles of Christian thought.
Or that it
Yeah.
was.
Or that it was
50 years ago, 200 years ago. This was like such a dominant view.
Yeah, and I found out quite accidentally when I went to the library at Biola and got a book, and there it was.
By one of the founders.
Yes. And I was like, oh
no.
yeah. Like, who knew that this was really a thing?
Yeah.
Do you want to describe what that is? In a nutshell?
Yeah, the curse of Ham is this idea that the curse that Noah spoke over his son and his grandson was the origin of the black race, and that it was their destiny to be slaves.
Yes.
To be subjugated by the other brothers of Ham, Noah's other sons. And so this was used as a biblical warrant for hundreds of years,
And not
for
just
slavery.
for slavery, but the idea that black people weren't as smart.
They weren't as smart.
That we shouldn't
they weren't
intermarry outside of
civilized.
our race. We
Yeah.
weren't civilized. So yes, this realm of thought has been carried out for a very long time. Do I think that other blacks, other like black people, African Americans, are sitting around talking about this at the coffee table? I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't even really know that outside of the maybe theological, maybe,
Okay.
like pastors or people who have studied theology would really even be aware of, one, the curse of Ham, one, and then two, that this, because I sure wasn't, but that this was in any way in relation to like blacks in general.
Well, I think it's just,
But it's important to talk about,
Yeah.
because this has been the foundation among Christians for slavery. This has been the foundation for, a lot of things in the realm of Christianity.
well, it surprised my socks off,
yeah,
because
yes, it did. I remember when you found out.
I was like, what? But I it's interesting to me how quickly it has fallen out of our memories. That Louis T. Talbot, which is the founder of the namesake of the seminary that I attended, his book that was published in 1938, which appears to be unredacted, you can buy it on Amazon right now, still contains these passages. And yet, since about the 50s or so, I think that this idea has so quickly fallen out of our memory that most people aren't even aware that it was a thing. But it was so pervasive. I mean, there's some examples that I give in the videos of just how culturally pervasive this view was, and that it was used as a critical biblical warrant by Christians in the South to, including the founders of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, that this was the warrant for defending slaves, defending slavery, defending slave ownership, and that this was the destiny of black people to be subjugated. That these were people that, were great defenders of the faith that held this position. I was utterly shocked to find this, and that's why I made the videos. I think they've gotten about 10 plays, but maybe having this conversation so more people will watch it. Because I really actually think it's important information to be aware of.
Yeah, I wonder if people just kind of forgot or if it's just not popular to talk about. Nobody really wants to be like, you're cursed. Like that's not really the pro thing to say.
Yeah.
Or if this is something like in your grandfather's minds that he remembers, or your grandmother, they remember this time, and just to know that the culture has drifted away from that line of thought, but still kind of hold that as a belief.
And that was sort of what prompted my question, is there a concept in Black culture that you're aware of that Black people think about this maybe in their subconscious, that they're part of a cursed race, or they're part of a cursed people, or they think about themselves in sort of a subjugation kind of a way, that maybe this is some remnant or leftover from this idea. But what I hear you saying is, no, I don't really think so.
Like, especially not in this time period where you have things like Black Girl Magic and Kings and Queens, and like just all of these things to kind of promote esteem within the Black community. And yeah, the idea of, that I am a product of a curse because of all my beautiful melanin.
I love your melanin.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that people are sitting around like, dang it, and that time
I was just curious.
I was cursed. I personally don't think so. People could, share this video and I could be sat down and completely, corrected. But I don't see that.
I would love to hear if there's any older Black people, viewers that watch the video and have anything to say about this, of, they remember a time when this was more of a view in our culture. I would love to hear from them as to how it maybe affected them, or if it was or if it wasn't a thing. Because, boy, I was stunned at how pervasive this view was 50, 100, 150 years ago.
But and what that view then meant in, like, it's kind of like the pebble in the pond. Like, you throw the pebble in the pond and then you get all these ripples. And this one pebble of a thought that the curse of Canaan now led to, the curse on Black people, or the Black race, what that then drifted out to become.
Yeah.
That is what I think is even, more tragic and disconcerting, is that one thought led to so many other atrocities.
Yeah, exactly. And that was what was just so rough for me to grapple with. And I'm still grappling with that, is the question of, how do I think about these great defenders of the faith, and how could they have such a glaring misunderstanding of Scripture on this issue that had such a far-reaching effect? Like you said, the pebble in the pond, it had such a far-reaching effect for generations of Black people, and it's just truly sad and stunning to me, and I'm still reeling a bit from it, to be honest. So it's good, but this is good. Like, we're showing people can have a conversation about race and not lose their minds.
Well, there's that. There's that. Or, sometimes you do, but that's okay.
Sometimes you do. And then you come back.
Yes.
So
you gather yourself to yourself.
And then you try again.
Yeah. So. But I think that's what's important too. I think that people often become worn out or wary in having conversations about race, and it doesn't have to be that. It can be hey, I don't understand this. Maybe I'm not explaining myself right. I don't understand you. Why don't we take a break?
Or let's try again later.
Yeah. Let everybody take a nap, because Jesus took naps. So we should all just take a nap and come back again.
Yeah.
And holding a posture where it's not always an offense. Like, aside from calling me a racial slur, you know what I mean? Like, taking a posture of grace and the assumption that the question is from a place of good, and not because there is a like an ignorance that you, or I don't even know the word for it, but like an ignorance because you just choose to not see.
That I'm really trying to see, that you're believing the best about me.
Yeah, believing the best. That, you know, even in this hard conversation or tears or whatever, I'm going to choose that your ignorance or lack of understanding, or my ignorance and my lack of understanding, is from a pure place and not from a place because I have, I'll just say it, this privilege.
Yeah.
And I think that's a buzzword that's going around in our culture right now. Well, you don't see certain things, or I don't see certain things because of this privilege that I have. Well, maybe it's just because I didn't grow up this way. Maybe it's just because I really, truly don't have an understanding. Can you break it down a little bit more?
Or maybe I'm just, the culture has become so hostile that I'm afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid if I make a mistake or I say something the wrong way, people are just going to jump on me, and I'm not going to know, they're going to call me names, and I'm not going to know where to go from there. And what started out originally as my heart just trying to ask an innocent question has become, you're a bigot.
Well, see, and there's this guy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Vodi Bakum.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I was listening to one of his teachings today, and he said, he used the verse in Jeremiah 17, that the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things. Like, who can know it? And when we hold that position of, let's say I will take this, that I said something and it was highly offensive to you, and I said it without my knowing, and well, how can you not know? There's an assumption that you know my heart.
Right.
But how can, when the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things, technically you can't even know your own heart, and now you're assuming that you know mine. I think our culture and the time that we're living in, we live in a bunch of assumptions and a bunch of offenses without standing back and giving people the benefit of the doubt, without standing back and saying, hey, maybe this isn't true. Let's question our doubts or our questions.
Yeah. And I think that that's true on both sides.
Yeah.
That in race conversations, but we're way over time, but we'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
So if people want to jump in,
because it'll be one of those days.
Yeah. But I think that in race conversations these days, one of the difficulties is that there is so much suspicion between, especially I think between white people and black people, that my motives and I know your motives, mm-hmm. and we already are in a set of assumptions or pre-beliefs about one another when we arrive at the conversation, mm-hmm. and so it's really hard to get past that. And there's sometimes where I listen to conversations between extremely well-meaning and thoughtful and intelligent black thinkers, and they'll talk about white people in such a derogatory way. I'll be like, are they assuming that no white people are going to listen to this? And are they assuming that white people like just are going to endure all of this, and that we don't understand what's being said? I mean, it's so hard for me, and I want to get in the conversation, but there's so much derogatory talk that it really about my motives, that it's like, wow, I don't know if I want to go down this path. It's really tough.
I agree that it is tough. I think that people within certain spheres, and I think that it's white or black, because the message is the same.
Yeah.
And there are tons of white speakers who are out there giving the same message as the black people who are giving those same messages. And it's more of a sociological message. And I would say a sociological message kind of with Jesus tacked onto the back of it. But I don't think it's fair to say that it's only black people, or like when you listen to black theologians who are speaking about those things, I definitely see that there are people on both sides. It's just a hard message. And I can say that I don't necessarily see like the love in that.
Yeah.
And I was going to say something and I completely lost that train of thought. Yeah, but I think that it is hard to jump into that conversation, because the people who are having that conversation are generally having that conversation within themselves and among themselves.
That was my point.
There's terminology and implicit agreement.
They all know what they're talking about, and they already all agree generally to a set of beliefs. And I'm coming as an outsider, and I'm trying to get into the discussion, and I'm like, I don't even understand what they're talking about, but I know they're really angry about white people. I think I'll turn this off now, and that's as far as it goes. And then we wonder why in our culture we're not succeeding more with unity. And I'm increasingly moving into the belief that the best place to have race conversations is actually in relationships where you have something at stake. When we're just screaming at strangers on social media, there's nothing at stake. And it's much harder to get to understanding because the love is easier to turn off when it's a stranger. Whereas if it's somebody in a physical body right in front of me, I want to figure out, how do I stay in a posture of love and preserve the relationship? The relationship has to be first. And the race conversation has to somehow fit into the relationship. I don't know how that happens on social media. It's just a question.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either. I see a lot of my friends who do post about it, and things that I completely agree with, the information that I think is great to have out there, things that I don't agree with. And I think for me in this season, prior to this season, I talked about race a lot. And now, I'm just like, how can I just do life with other people well? And know that if race comes up, I have thoughts and opinions, and that's okay. But I don't know that my biggest fight or plight right now needs to be about race. And I also don't think that I'm colorblind or that anybody should be colorblind, because that is,
we should talk about that sometime on the show.
We should.
Yeah.
I think that disregards people. Yeah. But there's tons to talk about regarding that. But I do agree that it should be done in relationship, and it should be done with the eyes to see people. And part of seeing people is to recognize that they have ethnicity and that they have culture and history and color in their skin. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And then it goes both directions.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Well, it's been fun. Thanks for being on the adventure with me.
Day by day.
Just working it out.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening in.
Yes.
As we're talking. We want to encourage you to check out our podcast. If you want to, if you missed the show live, you can always catch the replay. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts. Just search for Theology Mom. We're there. And we would appreciate your support. So we might need a new computer. I don't know what we're doing.
Life is real, people.
Yeah.
Life is real. We might need a new computer. You guys pray. Pray for that.
Yes.
And also donate for that. Yes.
But we do appreciate all of the support, and those of you watching and enjoying the show. Thank you.
Share the show. Share it on Facebook. Yeah. Yes.
The conversation with Sarah was very thought-provoking, and I hope people will share it. And so thanks, everyone. We appreciate your support, and we just want to say that we appreciate you supporting the show and being part of the conversation with us. Take care.
Yepers. Bye.
God bless.